OK, we would have seen and heard the noise being made by our mate in Saudi Arabia, Turki Alalshikh, about pay-per-view and the abolition of pay-per-view and some of the reaction to it. And it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you kind of wonder how that's going to work, because pay-per-view in of itself makes fighters whole economically, because a lot of it is used to supplement what fighters want in a fight against what they can potentially get, and the upside is given to them as a result of the pay-per-view outcomes. So you wonder what Turkey is suggesting in terms of making this bold statement, which is pay-per-view is a thing of the past, because it's a thing that's driven people away from the sport, reduced the numbers that could have been there, and ultimately encouraged piracy. Now, we're not, without wanting to fall on the wrong side of the Saudis, because we're all mates again, there is an element of hypocrisy about that, because piracy once upon a time was one of the big things done in Saudi Arabia by bout, which caused all the controversy between Newcastle being able to buy their football club in England until the Saudis copped to piracy and paid £1 billion to BM. But the principle of pay-per-view being scrapped, see, I think what he's saying is a little bit of subterfuge. I think he's talking about bundling up subscriptions and turning it into a more inflated running cost than a pay-per-view event. If you listen to what he said, he talked about ABC categories.
Yeah.
He talked about different price points of potential subscriptions with DAZN.
Yeah.
So the idea that he's attacking pay-per-view and taking it away because it doesn't make sense commercially to the numbers that he wants to grow, because he believes that boxing has a much bigger ceiling. He thinks it can get much bigger numbers, and the reasons why it's not getting bigger numbers is because it's behind a paywall. Now, that logic doesn't stack up, because football's been behind a paywall for years.
Yeah, DAZN's behind a paywall.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I think what he's actually saying is, I'm going to get rid of the $29 or $19.99 price point. I'm going to bundle it up, and people can buy 10 pay-per-view fights inside their subscription and pay an extra 150 quid a year for it. So I think if you watch it and find out how it develops, you'll find it's not quite the same as removing pay-per-view per se. It's just like a mobile phone package. He's rebundling it and giving you more for your subscription rather than an individual price every time you want to dip in and dip out, which of course would make sense, because it means DAZN can charge more money for their subscription, and then the revenue will be generated, because unless the Saudis are going to be Father Christmas forever, how are they going to make fighters whole if they've taken away the pay-per-view revenue? Because we know it goes to the fighters.
My understanding with that pay-per-view subscription is that he was going to keep the pricing as where it is right now, but with Ring Magazine shows and Riyadh season shows, there will be no pay-per-view events on there after obviously this Canelo fight. That's pretty much where we're at with that one.
I don't disagree with you that the individual instances you're not going to be charged $19.99 or $29.99 to be able to take the encryption down and watch the fight. But I'm pretty sure that you will pay an inflated amount of money to whichever platform the Ring Magazine decides to put his product on.
Well, the way it's been sold.
And don't forget, he moves it around where he wants to. He moves it to Netflix when he wants to be disruptive. He buys equity in DAZN and then moves the product around, so he's getting everybody at it a little bit.
I think...
You're a DAZN man, so what would you like to say?
I think there's a bigger problem here. I think there's a wider problem as well. And I think you look at the Alexander Usyk-Joseph Parker situation, it's a good example of this, where Ring and Seller said, we're not involved and we don't want to do this fight. And normally that's fine, because you normally then just say, OK, we don't need you, we'll just chuck it on pay-per-view. So both fighters can get paid. Now there is no pay-per-view. It makes a fight that Riyadh season and Seller are not interested in almost unviable. Yep. You can't make the fight because you can't chuck it on pay-per-view. I think the subscription price is going to go up.
This is my point.
Yeah, I do think, and I agree with you, I do think there will be tiers of subscriptions where you can buy one for £400 a year, which includes everything.
That's my
point. And then there's one below that includes 2 or 3, and then there's
so it's pay-per-view. It's pay-per-view
package.
through the back door, though, to some extent, because it's making fighters whole again. I mean, I do think there is an element of that the halcyon days of Saudis just paying what anyone wants. How much do you want? How much do you want?
Has
How
to
much
stop.
do you want? I think it's now stopping.
Yeah.
And I think naturally the levels are going to go back to somewhere resembling... We've got more interest, we've got more awareness, and boxing is alive now. So there's more fees to be generated. But I don't think you're going to see some of the ridiculous money that they've been prepared to pay. And that'll be interesting to see how it lands in the boxing community, with fighters now, having built their expectations up to here, now getting them reassessed along the lines of, this is what the market will pay. Because Usyk Dubois wouldn't have got anywhere near the kind of commercial revenues that Usyk's been fighting for recently.
I think that's fair, though, Simon. I do think there's an element of, OK, this is what we gave you, but here are the numbers. This is how many people tuned in. This is how many bums on seats. Unfortunately, we'll give you a bit more, but it's kind of showing us you're worth that.
Absolutely.
And I do feel like it's kind of easy to know what a fighter's worth.
Agreed.
Sorry to
but
say.
if you've,
it's quite easy,
but if you've
really?
distorted the market and created their headlines, like saying the footballers, you know, we discussed it in another show earlier on today. You guys get all the money, but you've got to play more games. Oh, hang on, we want more money, but we don't play more games. By the same token, now the fighters have had their heads turned and gone, well, you know what? If we fight for these guys, we can get X amount of money.
If I'm a fighter,
and now they've got their minds corrected.
But
again.
if I'm a fighter, I'm like, you know what? This was almost Christmas time, and we filled our boots.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that I filled my boots.
Yeah.
And now we just go back to it being normal again.
Well, it's also
Every
they had
fighter
to establish themselves, and by doing that, you have to go in, and you're going to have to pay top dollar to these fighters. So the fighters
and we agree with that.
themselves
It's seed capital. We understand.
They were around at that
it's
right
seed capital.
time,
but now,
it will.
But it'll be interesting to see how the market reassesses its situation when people start to have to reacquaint themselves with the reality of this is what the market says your fight's worth, not the X factor of this is what the market says you're worth plus this big load of cash on the top that the Saudis want to pay to get the fight in the first place.
But from the fight fan point of view, I mean, listen, it's a win-win, isn't it? Because we are now getting the fighters. We're getting.
He'll either be right, Spence. And just before we close off on this subject and go to a slightly more controversial one, he'll either be right about the market size because he emphatically believes, because he said it to me, that there's a market that can be grown bigger.
Yeah.
And the boxing world has limited itself by its own lack of thought process, its lack of innovation, and the lack of making the big fights. You, being in that digital space with DAZN and see the subscription numbers and working with them closely, do you think he's right that boxing can exponentially grow, Ade, to get that big audience that ultimately makes it grow as a sport to become an even bigger sport than it is now?
It can only grow. Yes, the answer is.
If it's more visible.
If it's more visible, and if fighters become more visible. It can only grow with the...
If you build stars.
With building more stars.
And also...
And that's why he looks at the American market, Spence, and thinks that's where the stars are. I think he knows the stars over here, but in the American market, it's still very much, you guys can be stars, because obviously he keeps on referencing the 80s and 90s where boxing was one of the top sports in America. So I think he thinks you were once the second or third sport behind NBA, NFL. You can be again the second or third sport.
And it's the simplicity that works as well. You know, with the boxing fan or the guy that don't mind dipping in and out of boxing from time to time. They go, it's so confusing, complicated with your international and WBC, WBA, IBF, WBO and all that. The simplicity sort of works, taking the politics away from it all. And I think that's what ultimately where Turkey's trying to get to, and that's where we're going to go. That's the wider picture.
We'll see where he's trying to get to. But one thing that does the sport no credit whatsoever, in my view, moving on from innovative thinking, perhaps that might work or may not work, and grow numbers that would be all benefit to all of us and the sport itself, is the WBC ordering a rematch between Galal Yafai and Francisco Rodriguez after Francisco Rodriguez has failed a drugs test and they've given him a variety of exoneration. What is going on here? What kind of precedent, Duke, you can answer that one, what kind of precedent are they setting by saying, A, that he doesn't get much of a sanction in the first place, and B, advocating for that he goes in and refights the kid that he bashed up when he was taking performance-enhancing drugs?
But the way I'm led to believe, Simon, is that the kid that beat Galal Yafai, there was something that he took in some energy bar.
But they all say that, Duke, don't they?
Yeah, no, I'm
Everyone
sorry.
says
Here it is.
This is what we're hearing, right?
This was the statement that was put out by the WBC that's saying Rodriguez had taken some. No, he had been to an over-the-counter. He'd got some stuff from over-the-counter about some.
And he's made a mistake.
About some energy
fight.
tablets that had banned substances in them. But what he'd done, Simon, this is the thing here, right?
Yeah.
So this is the bit where it gets confusing.
By the way, everyone tells you that.
Hold on a minute. So the WBC clean-up program, you have to fill out. So you get
prior to the fight, right?
Prior to the fight, you get your forms and you fill out and you tell them exactly what supplements you've been taking, etc., etc., etc. He put them on the forms before this went in, unknown that this had banned substance in it because it was an over-the-counter thing. It wasn't something that he's got off the guy in the back street. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So there's more. So what you're saying is there's more nuance and context because we were talking about it earlier on about the victim of the fight was Yafai, who's taking a licking. And he's now getting put back in a ring, or potentially advocated for put back in a ring with somebody that failed. However he failed it, Spence.
I agree.
Either the rules mean something or they mean nothing.
Well, here it is. He's put it on his registration form. This is he's declared what he's taken. So he's obviously
before the fight.
Before the fight.
So
then it's come back that it was a banned substance. But you go. This is where it is. in the world that we live in today, if you're going to get a substance that you don't know what's in that, and you're going, I want to get an energy, something before a fight, there's an energy, you have to read what's in there. Like when we was boxing, Duke, we were talking about this, weren't we? When we were boxing, there were certain substances that were banned, but you couldn't have like Night Nurse before because it had something in it. And so you have to go through that with a fine-tooth comb. Otherwise, you're going to have to accept the punishments, whether it was an energy bar or whatever it was.
I mean, we was quite strong on it earlier on another show, weren't we? About the realities of bad precedents. I think the WBC are a joke at the best of times. But notwithstanding that, I'm asking you what you think about this situation. Now that we've got maybe a bit more context and a bit more nuance, are you still quite as robust?
There's more context, but I don't understand. Again, I think this is the toughest sport and the most brutalist sport that there is. I don't understand the idea of telling me someone's tested positive for something after a meeting. Yeah. We get nothing from that. The idea is you catch someone prior to fighting so they don't go into the fight with loaded weapons.
But don't they do drug tests before the fight?
They do.
They do.
But it takes them so. Yeah, but a urine sample will only find certain things. Once they dig a bit deeper, hence why they found this thing. Yeah. And my issue as well with Francisco Rodriguez is that he's come from a camp in Eddie Reynoso who has so many red flags around him. There's more fighters that have tested positive from that camp than any other boxing camp in recent years.
That's
from
a
the
red
top
flag
dog
straight away, isn't it?
From the top dog to the bottom guys.
But the problem we've got is
too many.
But these fighters that keep saying, "Oh well, I didn't know I've been taking this supplement. I didn't know what
they
was
say
in
in every
that."
sports event.
Jaime Minguia just fought in Saudi Arabia against Bruno Saras. He's from that camp and he tested positive.
I mean, we believe, and I think we've discussed it previously, that ultimately strict liability should prevail, and that not only should the fighter catch the shrapnel, so should the training camp.
100%.
But interestingly, Dennis McCann, who tested positive for 2 anabolic androgenic steroids back in December, has spoken about this. Let's have a listen to what Dennis says.
There's about 8 different faults in the test. 8 different faults. Not 1, not 2, not 3. 8 different faults, which is massive. It's huge, and they're all not replying to me, ignoring me. That's what's going on so long. It's going on so long because of that. Do you know what I'm saying? All they want is justice.
The B sample has been requested by your team.
But they cancelled it.
They've cancelled it.
They've cancelled the B sample. But they cancelled the B sample because we wanted to ask them. We wanted answers. Why was my sample sent off the day before you tested me? Why did you send my samples off to America the day before you tested me? How is that possible? I've been tested 6 times or something like that. This camp, like 4 urine-free blood. Yeah. Why is there 16 samples or 18? So it was sent off with the correct numbers. Yeah. To a courier, and then all of a sudden there was 16 samples in the box. Whose samples is in that box? It's a wrong protocol. How can you do that? How can you put all different athletes' sample in the same box?
Right, Spence. I mean, I'm struggling with that. I like Dennis McCann. I sat next to his father at a fight, and obviously I want him to be in a situation where he's doing, not in a predicament that he's in. But what can you take from what he just said there?
It's all over the place, isn't it?
Let's be
honest. Yeah, it's all over the place. Like, Dennis McCann failed 2 tests. He's gone underground, done what you should do. Just get on with it, deal with whatever's going on. He said there, by the way, that was quite... I'm not sure whether to believe it or not, but he was saying he wasn't on a silent ban. They were sort of trying to deal with this whole process. It was all too complicated for me, Simon. I don't know enough about it because we haven't heard anything about it.
Sometimes...
I don't like it.
I don't like it at all either. Sometimes, and I like athletes coming forward because I think you shouldn't hide behind something if you think you're innocent. Yeah. But listening to him there, you can understand why some people are like, let the lawyers do the talking. Yeah. Because it was so incoherent. I didn't understand what he was trying to say. I don't know if he's trying to say he was spiked or tests were mixed with that. I'm not quite sure, but we'll wait to see how it plays out. Yeah. But again, he should let the lawyers speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll watch that situation as we do with many others.